get going. All right, so Liam, thank you for joining me today. Me and Liam are going to talk about the club, a few opinions, and yeah, we'll just get straight into it. So, Liam, the Arsenal game the other day, I think was quite like a crucial point in my opinion. I watched the Arsenal game and I thought the team looked, we looked structured. I thought we had a bit of identity about us, and then I had a bit of confidence going into the game at Bramall Lane. And I'm thinking, and I've looked at the lineup an hour before kickoff, and I'm thinking, well, the defensive approach is it's not going to work. I think all fans, when they looked at the team sheet, thought the exact same thing. What were your thoughts?
I've got to say, I was quite gobsmacked when I did see the team. I couldn't really work out where Newcastle United's attacking intent was going to come from. And I think within a couple of minutes of the game itself, you could tell that there was very little attacking idea. I think the players struggled with the structure. Steve Bruce described it after the game as playing with two false tens.
Yeah, I did
Look,
see
I'm
that.
not going to suggest that Steve Bruce is an English football innovator, but I'd certainly never heard of a false 10. I'm sure football types out there might explain it to me, but not only did he create one new position, he used it twice as well in the same team, and it just didn't work. And I think a lot of the players didn't really understand the structure, what they were meant to be playing. And I think there's a real lack of confidence running through that football club at the moment, a lack of belief. And I think the manager's largely to blame for that, to be honest. I think the manager sets the tone, and he set a really defensive tone in that Sheffield United game against a team. Let's not overlook it. They hadn't won a game this season in 17. That stretched back for 20 games in the Premier League, going back into last season. They hadn't won a game. Quite incredible, really. 6 months, 20 games, and Newcastle United go there with basically 8 defensive-minded in some ways players, plus 2. It was rather embarrassing, to be honest. And although he says there was a plan, it didn't look like there was much of a plan when you seen the players out there. At one point, Isaac Hayden was screaming and asking him what he wanted him to do, because in that second half in particular, I think Isaac Hayden was covering about 3 different positions, because of the system that would sort of switched and changed to.
Mm.
But yeah, there's a lot of disarray. There's a lot of, like I say, just a lack of belief. I mean, we don't believe. Like you said, you've seen it. You've seen the team before the game, and I wasn't full of belief going into that. I didn't believe Newcastle United were going to attack the game, and that was the way it panned out. Look, I think the fans get a lot of criticism. People say they expect too much. People say that just they say a lot of things that are genuinely sort of critical towards fans. But I think they're a good yardstick as to where things are at, and I think the reactions of fans out there. We, as part of our work and model, we do fan reaction pieces and things like that, and it was very obvious to me, just looking, say for example, on hashtag NUFC Twitter, that people were pretty disillusioned at that team that he selected,
Mm.
and I think because of that, he deserves the criticism that he's got, and I think he's taken it on the chin. Um, who knows what will happen with his future?
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. Um, I personally, when after the Sheffield United game, you see little snippets on Sky Sports of them walking off the pitch and them coming on the pitch and stuff like that. And I don't think, from my point of view, anyway, I don't think they look happy. These players, I genuinely don't think they do. They're looking. I don't know. You can kind of vibe it from a team, even when watching from the TV sometimes. It might just be me, but I really don't think they look happy, or there could be Bruce losing the changing room slightly. And you know what I mean? How do you feel on that front?
I actually agree with you 100%. Look, there's been rumours. I'm not going to say whether they're true or not, but there's been rumours for a long time. This isn't something new.
Mm.
And I think that a lot of footballers out there just do not look like they're enjoying playing football in this system for this team. Even on a good day, let's think about, if you're a footballer, what do you enjoy doing? You enjoy playing with a ball at your feet. You enjoy
Yeah.
playing a contest. Newcastle United, even like I say, on a good day against a lower team, and if they might win 2-0, for example, in a game, they'll still have only had 35-40% possession. Newcastle
Yeah.
United's model, the way Steve Bruce plays, is effectively allow the opposition to do as they please, sit off them, give them the ball. Look, a lot of players aren't going to enjoy that. They'll take it for a week or two, or they'll take it against the big teams, or they'll take it as part of a larger plan. But when that is the whole plan, you get players like Miguel Almiron. I'd never seen the lad frown. I mean, under Rafa Benitez in that first 6 to 8 months at Newcastle United, beyond that, it was a constant smile on his face, whether we were winning, losing, playing well. That was a boy who ran out on the park and clearly enjoyed playing his football. I've never seen the lad smile for 6 months now. I've not seen that in him, and he's playing exactly like that. The
So
lad is, yeah, it's draining the life out of him. And there's other players out there as well. The same will happen with Callum Wilson if he continues to be isolated. That lad's a really, really talented forward. And if he's left hung out to dry like he was against Sheffield United too often, and he has this season largely, if he scores goals, it's because of his own instinct or a penalty kick. It's
yeah,
not because the team are creating bucket loads of chances for him. And that's a big problem. You'll see that the smiles drain from a lot of these players. That performance on Tuesday night looked like a team, like you said, who were not enjoying playing football and not enjoying the way Steve Bruce has got them training and playing.
I totally agree. I think I saw one of your tweets after the game on Tuesday evening saying like that could be the worst football game like you've ever watched. And we
First half,
got,
the
yeah,
first half, that was probably the worst 45
yeah,
minutes of football. And I think you add context to that. So I've seen Newcastle United concede 5 goals in 45 minutes at Old Trafford against Manchester United. We've
yeah,
seen them smacked by Liverpool at home in 45 minutes.
mm,
Let's add context to this. This was about the whole thing. And even in those games, Newcastle United have probably half looked like a football team. I thought that team on Tuesday night, the amount of little 3 and 4 yards short passes misplaced into space, looks like a team that have got no confidence. Look like they're absolutely smashed.
mm.
It looked like they're playing a different sport at times.
It was. I think Hendrick had a few. Longstaff had a few just misplaced passes. Yeah, I see your point. Um, you'll know yourself. Bruce has said a few times now that we're a work in progress. Do you agree with that or?
No,
Mm,
no, I don't. I think this is the finished product. I think this is Steve Bruce's finished product. And the issue that I've got with it is, I think it could get worse. I think he was largely riding on a wave when he first took the football club, because he had a dressing room which was united. He didn't walk into a football club where he had to sort the dressing room out, which often is the case when new managers walk in. He had a good, strong, good set of lads who'd been through fights together. A lot of them had won promotion together. A lot of them had battled through and shown character and fight and spirit in games. He didn't have to convince the squad to play for him. They just did it anyway. They were in a system whereby they were really well drilled, really well trained for about 3 years previous under Rafa Benitez. He just had to tweak things, and it worked, and it worked for a while. Um, but then when he's had to imprint his own, make this team in his own image, is when he's had problems. When he's had to break that mold that was there already, when he's had to adjust and change systems, change tactics, try and make them be a little bit more expansive than what they were, because he has got better players than the previous manager. They've spent a lot of money. He hasn't been able to do that. He hasn't shown the skills to be able to break Newcastle out of this defensive mindset. And now we're kind of stuck in the defensive mindset without the tactics and without the ideas and plan to get out of it, which is something you would find under other managers. And that's why I think his time should be at any other normal club would be running out.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I agree. From football, anyone that watches Newcastle will agree with you on that front. I see a lot of fans compare Bruce and Rafa, and there is an argument for it because the season Rafa had, I think he ended on 44, and Bruce took over and he ended on 44 as well. And I see people get frustrated with comparing the two, and people say don't ever compare Rafa to Bruce, and I kind of agree with that because when I was watching football with Newcastle United under Rafa, I don't know. I always thought there was there's thought process behind it. There's tactics behind it. There's knowledge. Do you know what I mean? And I trusted him. I trusted Rafa. I always would do. I trust him. Until the day I die. I trust Rafa Benitez. Which football fan wouldn't? Do you know what I mean? And then Bruce has come in, and well, the trust has kind of fallen off a bit. So, to people, what would you say to people that compare Bruce and Rafa Benitez?
I think it's very simple. I'll take my journalistic hat off here, and I'll talk as a fan because I'm a fan too. When Newcastle United started the season, and I don't know the exact stats, but when Newcastle United started the season, they didn't win a game for maybe it was 8, 9 games at the start of the season, might have even been 10. At no point during that run, when Newcastle were at the bottom of the table, in and around, did I ever think he would not keep Newcastle United in the division.
Yeah.
Compare that to now, Newcastle United still sit 7, 8 points above that relegation zone, and I'm more fearful now than I was when there were 10 games without a win. Much more fearful. That is because of what you said. That comes down to the bigger picture. With Benitez, there was a plan. He used to plan seasons out. His teams, no matter where he's been at, get better as the season goes on. That's because of the way he trains them. He's very specific. Everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what they've got to do in every single situation. And look, some players didn't like that. Some players, John Joe Shelby's, Matt Ritchie's have said it publicly, they didn't like that kind of thing. But most players would run through a brick wall for him because they knew if you do it Rafa's way, the results will eventually come. Just
Mm.
keep sticking at it. There isn't that with Bruce. There's too many changes. There's no continuity. There's no continuity in ideas, no continuity in system. He quite happily would switch, in my opinion. I think he's just waiting for an opportunity to go back to four at the back, two up front. That's what he wants to play. And look, to be fair, a lot of the results they've got this season have been by playing that formation,
Yeah.
but it doesn't suit the players best. And if you had a better coach, I think they could make this five at the back system work and make it more attacking. But he just doesn't seem to have the skill set to be able to switch that from that defensive five at the back to a slightly more expansive one, and has to keep reverting back to the very simple and basic 4-4-2, which I think probably is the best formation for getting results between now and the end of the season. But it's gonna be a really tough run in. I see a lot of fans out there on social media talking. A lot of them say, "Oh, what we're relying on results from them and results from them." The way I look at it is we're too far out at the end of the season to be looking at anybody else's results.
Mm.
Newcastle United get some points on the board, because
Yeah.
if they don't get any more points on the board, they will be relegated. That's the top and bottom of it. They
Mm.
need to conjure up probably another 16 points from somewhere to make sure that they've got a real good chance of staying in the division.
Mm.
And you look at the performance on Tuesday, it's hard to imagine they'd get another point if they played it like that in every game.
Yeah.
They won't, but they need that slice of luck. They need Steve Bruce to find that four-leaf clover again, because
Mm.
it's they just need it because of the bigger picture, because there is so much going on behind the scenes. Because this season isn't just about staying in the Premier League for Newcastle United's short-term future. This is about staying in the Premier League for Newcastle United's long-term future, because there is a takeover waiting in the wings that may well get ratified before the end of the season. If that's the case, Newcastle United get relegated, it's almost back to square one in a lot of ways, because it may not go through if Newcastle United are at risk of becoming a championship club.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest real and present danger to the long-term future of this football club, is Newcastle United dropping into the second tier.
Mm. Yeah. You talk about us dropping into the second tier, and if I remember the Steve McLaren season, and I think it was March until, I think, yeah, it was March until we sacked McLaren. It was the Bournemouth game. I was at the Bournemouth game. I think we lost 3-0, 3-1 to Bournemouth, and he got sacked.
Yeah.
And that was too late. And you talk about the club being relegated and the takeover and stuff like that. If for me, the club need to act sooner rather than later before the damage is already done. Do you know what I mean? I think we're mid Jan. Do you know what I mean? Like it can be sorted. I think anyway. A lot of people will disagree and say it should have been done earlier, but I think from mid Jan to May, early May, it can be sorted. I think.
Definitely. I think they've got to be decisive. I think that's the important thing. Um, and I think if you watch that, any football fan watching that, any owner that cared watching that game on Tuesday would have serious concerns about the football club. And I would imagine if most owners wouldn't sack the manager this week, they would probably give him Monday night to turn it around. Maybe Aston Villa after that. And if things don't change, then I think you've got to really seriously consider the manager's future. I think he would accept that himself, because they've gone 8 games. Yes, they've been tough fixtures, but they've not for 1 second looked like winning any of those 8 games.
Yeah, you're right.
Including that, a really dominant performance against a team who are in the bottom three, Fulham. Fulham absolutely dominated Newcastle United. And even with 10 men, when Newcastle got a fortuitous penalty decision, they they didn't look like scoring or winning that game at home against a team who had struggled for points this season. And even when you go back to Newcastle's last win, West Brom, there is an argument to be made. It was a Dwight Gale header late on. There was a definite argument to be made that West Brom were the better side in that game.
Mm.
So I do have real concerns about Newcastle United, whoever they play, and I think a change in manager would adapt that. I think would be able to fresh ideas, fresh impetus, even just a new voice in the dressing room to maybe galvanise could be just enough to keep Newcastle United up. Look, do I think Newcastle United get relegated? I think they'll probably get enough points anyway. I think they will. They'll pick up points you don't expect. But you can't rely on that. You can't rely on
No.
that being a trend. You can't rely on lucky wins here and there being a trend. You've got to have a plan in place, and that's just never been the case with Steve Bruce. And it's, if you look back upon his time at Sunderland, Aston Villa, most of the clubs he's been at, apart from Hull in recent times anyway, in the last decade, have all went through this similar cycle where he has a reasonably successful first season. Then things start to go wrong. He criticises the fans. They criticise his tactics, his selection, his shape. And this is where we are. It's been played out again at Newcastle United. And most people who follow his career could have predicted this would happen in the
Mm.
way that it has. And it's just playing out. But in Newcastle United, my only fear is that you mentioned the March idea. Mike Ashley's proven historically that he doesn't change quickly. Most people would sack the manager, like I say, this week or within the next fortnight if things don't change. You have to go a long way over the top of the hill for Newcastle United to really start getting towards sacking territory. And we've just got to really hope, with so much being at stake off the field, that he's learned his lessons from history. That leaving McLaren those extra couple of games meant Newcastle United went down. The club would stand to lose between 100 and 150 million pound. That's not even talking about the value of the football club if they
Mm.
get relegated to the Championship. And Mike Ashley needs to realise, look, I'm pushing hard for this takeover, and I need to keep my money safe. And even if it's a short-term stick and plaster of a manager to come in, just to like I say, to galvanise and change things up, then I think that's, to me, as a normal person, that'd be a worthy investment. I think just to make sure you keep it safe. It's a bit like if you decide I'm going to sell my house, but there's a crack in the front window. You
Yeah.
know, like well, you know, if I pay 200 quid to get that window fixed at the front, somebody will buy me house for 200 grand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the type of thing you can, if you spend a little bit just to make sure that you keep the big bucks rolling. And I think he probably should do that, but he's proven in the past he hasn't. So we all play the waiting game and wait to see if he is decisive or if he isn't.
Mm. You spoke about the West Brom and Fulham fixture, and for me, that surely alarm bells start ringing there. You know what I mean? Promoted sides coming to St James's Park of all places, and we play like that. For us, for fans, not so my age, but fans a bit older than me, I see them complain even more because they're used to growing up watching the Kevin Keegan days and the my dad talks about the games against Liverpool and the you know what I mean and stuff like that. So from where that's concerned, do you feel sorry for a lot of the fan base?
Yes, I do. Um, I really feel sorry because there's a generation. How old are you?
20.
20. You're in that generation. There is a generation of Newcastle United football fans who do not know anything but Mike Ashley, and I find that really, really sad.
Yeah.
I'm 33, so I've got 13 years on you. And I was a season ticket holder at Newcastle United when we were in the Champions League.
No.
I got my first season ticket when the ground was expanded in 2000. I had a season ticket for 10 years. I seen. I've been to. I've been to Wembley in 2000 for a FA Cup semi final. Should have won the cup that year. I've been to Champions League games. I've seen Juventus. I've seen Barcelona. I've seen all that. I've heard the Champions League music at St James's Park. To people like you, that
Yeah.
is unthinkable. Really, it's probably unthinkable. I've been to Europa League semi-finals. I've been there as a fan, those kind of things are just pipe dreams to fans now, because it's just, you can't imagine it, and I feel really sorry for that. I remember being in tears when Graham Fenton scored that goal, Blackburn, the season that your dad's probably talking about, the Liverpool games,
Yeah.
those kind of things. I remember watching those games on Sky. I remember that season unfolding. I remember we used to have these things where we stuck things on. Oh, it sounds really archaic, by the way. We used to have these notice boards where you stuck little, you move the teams up and down as to where they were in the league.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
get
I
what
remember, yeah, I was very very young, and I remember the day. I would have only been about 8, something like that. I remember the day when I had to move Newcastle United from first to second. I remember physically doing that.
it's awful.
But those were dream times. You know what I mean? Those were times when Newcastle United had flair, wanted to achieve, wanted to be the best version of Newcastle United they possibly can be. And I yearn for those days again. I really do. And I do feel sorry because I've got a son. He's 7 years old, and it's hard. It's a hard sell telling him to support Newcastle United and want to. He's at the age now where he's wanting to watch games and bits and bobs, and he'll come in maybe halfway through. So, how's Newcastle getting on? And you look at the screen and it's, they're getting beat 2-0, and then another goal will go in or whatever. It's a hard sell. It's a hard sell to get a young generation to follow people like yourself and myself on.
Mm.
And I hope that for you people like yourself and younger and slightly older, that we can get some kind of glory days back. I'm not talking about Champions League qualification, winning trophies, winning titles. I'm talking about just being the best version of Newcastle United we can be. And we were that under Rafa Benitez. We were hamstrung. He had two hands, one and a half hand tied behind his back with the terms of Mike Ashley. But he wanted and he understood what Newcastle United can be, and he wanted the best for us. And those are the type of days, even if we don't get this grand takeover in time, that at least if we can get somebody who cares and somebody who fights for us and wants the best, then I think we'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, that's brilliant answer. There's nothing more I don't think than that I want than to Newcastle just I don't know, play some exciting football, expansive football. I'm watching. I'm thinking that would I never really watch and think, you know what I mean. That was brilliant. That was brilliant piece of play. Or do you know what I mean? But we can only wish. Steve Bruce brought in a lot of transfers over the summer. Spent quite a lot of money, really. You could argue in his favour that them transfers haven't really worked. You've got Joel Linton, who's just not worked at all. You could argue Fraser, Jamal Lewis hasn't looked the best, and Hendrick. Do you know what I mean? Could you argue that side of it for Bruce?
Um, I wouldn't say all of the transfers. Some of them you mentioned there have been Bruce selections. The last one you mentioned has Jeff Hendrick. There's been a few others as well. Um, Newcastle have spent a lot of money. Have they spent it really well in the last few years? I think if you take Joe Linton out of the equation, you don't look when you sign any even top managers. If they sign 5 players in the summer, they know if 3 of them come into the team and work really well, they've had a really really good summer.
Mm.
You don't. You get some things wrong. Every manager gets some things wrong. And I think all told, I think in the last 2 years, like I say, take Joe Linton out of the equation because of the money. If you look at the rest of the business that they've done, I think they've probably added value to the squad. Alan Maximin, Callum Wilson in particular have added real value to the squad. There's been others as well. Jeff Hendrick's probably a really bad example. He hasn't. I think in time Ryan Fraser could add value to the squad.
So do I.
Really does at the moment. I think Jamal Lewis potentially in time in the right system and coach probably could add value to the squad. Isn't at the moment. But I think there's enough there in this squad. They've got more tools in this squad than what Rafa Benitez had at the end of his reign, and I think they should be better, but they're not better.
Mm.
A lot of that doesn't come down on Bruce because although he might try and tell everybody that he signs the players, look, it comes from above his head who they sign. He has his ideas and puts his lists across as any manager does, but are they necessarily his players? I think that's definitely up for argument. And if you go back to the summer of St. Maximin and the summer of Joe Linton, then he didn't select any of those players. He might try and take credit for them and say, yes, I gave the okay, but they would have signed, they'd already agreed Joe Linton well before. They'd already done a lot of the 95% of the groundwork on St. Maximin before that that deal was done and others. But yeah, I think they've done some bad business, but overall, I would say over the last 2 seasons, they've definitely added value to the squad. Like I say, you pick those 2 players out in particular, Callum Wilson and St Maximin as the 2 standouts of the summers. But they need more. They need more. They're still not there. But I do think a better manager could get more of a tune out of these footballers. And I think they look. You mentioned it earlier about smiles on faces, and I think that really rings true. There's a lot of players playing with their head down here, and a fresh face or a fresh idea. Even if it's the same manager, but with fresh ideas and a fresh impetus, would definitely go a long way to potentially keep Newcastle United in this division. And that's all we strive for this season. That's not what I want Newcastle United to be. But this season in particular, because of what's going on off the field, we have to stay in this division.
Yeah. That's a brilliant answer. We've had some good topics there and some brilliant conversation, Liam. I want to end this by asking you, apart from Alan Shearer, who is your favourite Newcastle player you've watched?
That's a really good question. So obviously when I was really young, I absolutely adored watching Rob Lee. I absolutely adored watching Peter Beardsley because of his tricks and the way he could beat a man. But going a bit later, when I was really getting into football, starting to go home and away and that kind of thing, and traveling, and I got my season ticket, it was players like Norberto Solano, Gary Speed, Lauren Robert. Like these type of players really excited me. Really got, Robert could score any kind of goal from anywhere. And Norberto Solano was just a consistent, just an absolute assist machine for Alan Shearer. Like, used to just create from constantly. But I would say, like, from when I was really young, I would say my favourite player was Rob Lee, because he's the type of midfielder that if you put Rob Lee in this Newcastle United team, he would transform it like that, because he was a midfielder who could go box to box. He arrived late in the box. He scored goals from outside, inside. He was just a top midfielder and a leader as well from the midfield, and they could do with that at the moment. So I think I'd probably say, yeah, Rob Lee would be my favourite player, apart from obviously the main man.
Yeah, the main man. But I when you ask people that apart from Shearer, they kind of go, "Oh well," do you know what I mean? But it's funny because the stuff you say about a lot of them players, exactly what my dad says. Solano was I didn't get to watch him, but he was loved by the fans apparently. He's the only Peruvian to play in the Premier League, isn't he? I think he is.
I think there's been a couple since, but he was the first. Yeah, he was the
Yeah,
first.
first. Yeah. Well,
Oh, he was brilliant. He was brilliant. He used to just put things on a plate for Alan
yeah.
Shearer. Like, really, he used to just sort of chip balls in constantly from the right hand side. And he would score goals. He would always guarantee between 5 and 10 goals himself, whether it was free kicks, penalties, or goals from open play. Newcastle don't have that at the moment. The goals don't come from everywhere. Last season it was relying upon defenders chipping in and John Joe Shelby. And this time it's purely, absolutely, if Callum Wilson does not score, Newcastle United don't score. So it's become a real problem. They could do with adding a midfielder. Not maybe he's not in the Solano ilk, but definitely in the Rob Lee ilk or a Gary Speed ilk, who get on the end of things, get in the box and just get them that little bit further up the field.
One last question before we stop it. What is your favourite Newcastle game you've seen, or one of your favourites?
There's been some enjoyable ones. Oh, that's a really tough question. That
I'll go with mine first. I think that mine will be the 5-1 against Sunderland. And Kevin Nolan did the dance. That's my best memory of Newcastle. I think I love that. That was ace.
So there's lots like that. There was 2 from that season which were quite special, actually. So there was the 5-1, but there was also the 6 against Aston Villa at the start of the season, because of what had gone on previously.
Yeah, they'd relegated us, didn't they?
The stub on the tyne, all that kind of thing. That was
Yeah.
pretty special. I'm sure Andy Carroll got a hat-trick in that game. But I'm going to have to probably roll the years back further, and I'm going to sound like an old man talking to you here, but I would go back to the likes of, the Man United, the 5-0.
5-0, yeah.
I would go back to the 4-1 at Sunderland. I would go back to games like the 2-2 in Inter Milan, where we should have beat them. We should have won had it not been for defensive errors. Would be PSV in the Europa League quarter final. Gary Speed scored a header. I was there at the Gallagher end. Little memories like that, like cup runs and cup competitions. lots. I just thinking off the top of my head, the Man United game where Roy Keane swung for Alan Shearer, we totally
I've
did them
seen
that
clips
day.
of that.
Days like that, which just live so long in the memory, so special. And I long for those days back. I long for those days where we can all be in a football ground again, hugging each other when moments happen in matches. And look, there wouldn't be many moments for Newcastle United, but even recent moments, there was the day that Newcastle United won the championship. It's hard to pick like that in terms of it wasn't a major trophy, but that's what success feels like. The drama at the end of that game
Jack
was
Grealish.
quite incredible. The Grealish goal and the way it rippled around the stadium. I was at St James's Park that day, and it was like, something's happened here. And then the news came, and then watching and waiting, we were waiting around for ages for the final whistle to go elsewhere, and the players were watching things on phones, and then you could see them rippling here and there and jumping up and down, and you knew that Newcastle had won the trophy. Little things like that are quite incredible. There's been a few moments. Even looking back on Steve Bruce's time, there's been little flashes of moments which Newcastle United fans, we don't have success really. So you have to live on these moments.
Yeah.
The Matthew Longstaff goal against Manchester United from last season, that was I was there moment. That was one of those where it was really exciting to see a young lad score a goal. Miggy Almiron's first goal that he scored, that was a pretty special moment. There's look, you have to take joy when you're a Newcastle United fan. You have to take joy in little moments like that because that's your lot in terms of recent history, anyway. But yeah, there's been lots of moments, and it isn't all bad being a Newcastle United fan or a Newcastle United writer for that matter.
Yeah, well, some brilliant answers, Liam. Thank you so much. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, no worries.
Nice
Best of luck with the project, mate.
Yeah. This will do absolute wonders. It really will. So I can't say how much I appreciate it, mate. I really do. Thank you.
No problem. If you're pushing it on social media or anything, just tag us in it, and
Yeah.
I'll social it myself. All right.
Nice one. That's really good. Thank you.